power system. It's unbelievable. But let's talk first of all about solar flares.
Well,
back in the 1800s,
yes.
we had the Carrington event.
Mm-hmm.
And the Carrington event, named after Professor Carrington, was a huge solar flare that knocked out the only electrical thing we had going on at the time, and that was the telegraph system. It fried railroad ties and the metal. It was unbelievable. If that flare were to hit today,
oh yeah,
and we've dodged a couple of them,
yes, you know,
it would shut the grid down for how long?
Well, at the time, we were not a wired society. We didn't have the types of interconnection that we have now. But it was devastating, and people's headsets and that all caught on fire. I mean, they had their equipment catching on fire. If that happened today, if we got a direct hit of a geomagnetic storm, those charged particles.
Something.
Yes. I mean, there's a range, and it goes all the way up. When that geomagnetic storm and those charged particles hit our Earth's atmosphere, the atmosphere would spread the particles out before they came and actually struck Earth. If we didn't have an atmosphere, it would just come down and hit one spot.
Mm-hmm.
So that electromagnetic pulse naturally created would spread, and everything with these circuits, these small circuits, including power lines and anything that's connected to the grid, would not be able to absorb the strength and the impact of those particles. Your surge suppressors or protectors would not be sufficient. Now, there's a way to protect your electronics, and we can talk about that, but the bottom line is a naturally occurring solar flare could do that to us. And we dodged a bullet, as you mentioned, a couple of summers ago.
It went out the side of the sun. It wasn't facing us directly.
We missed it by about a week. As our Earth's rotation went around the sun.
We lucked out.
If the timing had been just a little bit different, there would have been nothing that we could have done about it, and we would have taken a direct hit.
How long does it take these particles to hit us? A couple days?
Well, it depends on the strength and intensity, but fortunately, NASA has an incredible satellite system that reports these active regions. The sun has holes, and if you go, in fact, I have an app on my phone that warns me when an active region is flaring out.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's trust me, when you fly a couple of thousand miles from home, you think about these things.
Sure.
What happens? Okay, bye George, I'm going home.
But I'm on my way.
These flares are monitored. These active regions are monitored, and this plasma is ejected from the sun, and they can tell based upon computer models if we're at risk of that ejection hitting us, the coronal mass ejection.
Well, and they do let us know sometimes. I mean, we, through the radio industry, we get told we've got a flare coming our way. It could be disruptive to some kinds of communication.
Yes.
But these are small. These
Yes.
are M size or C
Right.
size.
Or even maybe an X1, which is on the low end.
Yeah.
And you'll get warnings of GPS. You may have recalled years ago that there was an issue with airline traffic from England to the United States, and they had to reroute airline traffic because the geomagnetic storm had dipped down so low near Iceland and areas that they were afraid it would disrupt the navigation systems. The real question is, NASA will know if a major storm is coming. And as we've discussed, the question will be, will our government inform us that a major storm is coming, and in fear that if they do, perhaps the society will panic in advance, or maybe unnecessarily, because these things aren't 100% predictable.
They do warn us to date.
Yes.
I would think that in the flare episode, they would probably say something. We have an X8 coming or whatever. Prepare yourselves. But here's the problem, Bob. What happens if we get hit with an X25?
Right.
Like Carrington.
Right.
What do we do?
Well,
There's an uninsulated grid.
Yes, there's nothing we can do, and in my opinion, what would happen is that our government would rally their different mechanisms for protection.
For themselves, for government.
Command and control of the military, things like continuity of government.
NORAD.
All of those things would immediately hunker down, probably very quietly if they want to keep it silent, with the hopes of being able to not only protect the United States in the aftermath, but to try and help as many citizens as possible. But the fact of the matter is, our government does not have enough stored food rations, MREs, other means to take care of everybody. And that's why the EMP Commission suggested that if we have a prolonged power outage, regardless of the cause, up to 90% of Americans could die. And then the question becomes, how quickly will that happen? They suggest within 12 months.
Oh, my God. We saw what happened when Hurricane Katrina hit.
Yes.
How the Environmental Protection Agency, how FEMA, that they were hopeless and helpless to get anything done. It was a disaster of many biblical proportions.
Criminal negligence,
magnified this
basically.
around the country.
Well, Katrina is a great example. You have stories in the press, you mentioned Ukraine and others, that the threat is real. I've written books showing people that the threat is real. But whether they believe it for themselves is another story. When Katrina was coming, the whole country saw it coming. But yet there were people who decided to remain behind because they thought they could ride it out or didn't take it
Didn't
serious.
think it was going to be as bad as it was.
And it cost them their lives, or they were standing on rooftops when the water was up to their gutters. And the first thing you have to do is educate people, show them that the threat is real. The second thing you have to do is convince them to pay attention so that when that threat is coming, they know how to react and deal with it. And it's a two-pronged approach. There's one thing studying the science and talking about how it could happen and give examples, but it's another step to show people how to be prepared and get ready for it.
I think so too.
And that's a total failure of our government today with coronavirus.
You know, Ted Koppel is another one who is trying to wake us up to these possibilities. A cyber attack, which we'll get into in just a second here.